Hello, everybody. It's me, ya boy, still the DM. Again, everything looks a little bit different. I'm still trying to figure out the flow I particularly want for these session recaps. Whether or not I want to go back to doing a script that scrolls down the screen or just leave up some interesting art that's related to the session. I don't know. Your opinions is appreciated. I don't know if anyone watching this would be reading the script with me or not. Uh, but today, I'm going to be recapping my Ixalan campaign for the week of December the 2nd, which I'm going to call Shrine of the Golden Serpent. So our session opened up with the party heading down the stairs, the secret entryway that Shura revealed in the previous session. And going down and exploring our rather vast collection of NPCs and PCs, discovered this huge chamber full of gold. Large chests, baubles and trinkets, jewels of all sorts. There's just mounds upon mounds of gold across this whole room. The gold was in piles that was like, they weren't evenly spaced, but the piles were over 15 feet long and over 7 feet, or about 5 feet high, I think it was. So like, there's a lot of coin in here, like an obscene amount of gold. They discovered this long room had 4 torches, which they would discover later were Everborn. They were basically magical lit torches with fire that didn't produce heat, just light. And they noticed some grates along the floors and a large circular grate in the center of the room. And they could hear and see through the grates the water rushing beneath the temple that is being shot up and making that river at the base of the shrine. So the party still pretty tentatively creeped forward, making sure that, they tried to keep their wits about them. And once Famine, who had taken a bit of the lead going down the stairs, because honestly she has the most hit points out of the entire party, thanks to being a dragon-blooded sorcerer. And they all crept forward, and when Famine got to a certain point, a bit of the debris and trinkets, this large sort of tarp at the very back edge of the room between 2 piles of gold suddenly began to bubble and surge like there was boiling water under a thin cloth. And then this massive amalgam of snakes ripped its way up and out. The snakes had these pale, very faded green scales, and their eyes were these dark, not dark, sorry, sort of milky white. They looked almost albino. And they rose up and formed this massive amalgam of snakes with these 2 limbs and a bunch of different snake-like heads, all coming together to form this creature, which I call a snake golem. And that's when the fight happened. And not gonna lie, most of this session, because our sessions are only about 4 hours long, and it usually takes us about half an hour to 45 minutes to get started, either just due to people showing up late, or just we're all friends, so when we get together for the first time in 2 weeks, we shoot the shit and just catch up with each other. It happens. It means that fighting in D&D, especially like a bigger fight, like a boss fight, eats up time just because of how the system works. So most of this entire session involved fighting the Serpent. I believe Osaha was able to go first, and sort of ran up to try and get into a better position. I don't believe Osaha got into melee at this point. I think Osaha was pretty far back and just ran up. At which point everything just sort of went to shit. As everyone moved into position, after I think 2 of the party went, because I believe 2 of them were activated before Initiative 20. It got to Initiative 20 which allowed the golem to activate one of its lair actions. Lair actions, a mechanic in D&D, were particularly powerful creatures or creatures of unique magical influence have a lair. And if you fight that creature within the boundary of their lair, they get extra actions that are tied to the lair. In this case, the snake golem had two lair actions as long as it fought within a temple of this snake god. It could either A, summon 1d4 poisonous snakes from the different grates, because there was snakes beneath the temple, of course. There is actually a whole room down there that the party never really found about. That's basically just a magical snake breeding pool. But they didn't find that and will never find that because it would involve having to dismantle the temple, and they don't have that kind of equipment. So the snake lair has two lair actions, and normally lair actions can't be taken the same 2 turns in a round. But I felt that would sort of. I kind of decided that wouldn't be as useful to this lair to force that versatility, so I did throw out that rule. And the two actions were it summons 1d4 poisonous snakes from the grates. Poisonous snakes being just the poisonous snake monster manual stat block, which is like a CR 1-8 snake or 1-4 snake. It has 13 AC, 2 hit points. I think it dies if it gets hit, basically. And they're not really a threat that much. They deal 1 damage with their bite because they're a tiny creature. They don't really hurt you. But the poisonous snakes deal an additional 2d4 poison damage if you fail a DC 10 con save. And DC 10's pretty low. Like it's the baseline for what DCs usually are. It's just 10, and then you sort of build onto that. But you make enough DC 10 con saves, you're probably going to fail some of them unless your modifier is very high. And some people did end up getting poisoned by the little snakes, but they were at most an annoyance. They weren't that effective. But that's kind of what they were there to be, just an annoyance. In fact, they actually managed to tie up 2 of the NPCs in the back of the room. Mikhail and Orson, Orson the scribe who had lost his arm 2 sessions ago, or the previous session with the fight with the vampire. And Mikhail, the ex-Sun Empire Ranger. They were pretty far away from the fight because Orson was busy tallying gold as the scribe of a pirate ship, the scribe's apprentice. His goal is to quickly tally up and do math, keep records of what people find, that sort of thing. Plus, he also was missing the arm that is his primary arm, so his fighting was hard because he had never really used his other arm to fight with his rapier before. And it was an interesting encounter, to say the least. And those little snakes managed to keep them fairly distracted. The other Lear action is that, and this was the first one it used while everyone was still pretty far away from it, it could flood the chamber. So the snake could pull upon the magic of the breeding room, the magic that kept its body coalesced, and through those grates pump in an enormous amount of water very quickly. And so it could pump in about 5 feet of water, and the water would drain on its next turn if it didn't take that Lear action again and pump in another 5 feet, which would, thanks to draining and just how the work, it would raise it up another 2.5 feet to 7 feet. Now, to be fair, I probably should have played this encounter smarter. I'm not gonna lie, it's the first time in a long time I was DMing with a creature that had legendary or Lear actions, and that's a mechanic I've never really had a lot of experience with in 5e, though I've played a lot of D&D 5th edition. My campaigns normally fall apart before characters are at a level where I feel comfortable throwing legendary or lair actions at them, or just it's a one shot, or it's a short term campaign that's ending at around level 6 or 5. And they never got to the point where they should have legendary actions thrown at them. So it's still a mechanic that I'm a little unfamiliar with for 5th edition. Uh, though, to be fair, most of my role playing experience as a DM comes from different systems: D&D 4th edition, D&D 3.5, Pathfinder, Fantasy Age, Dragon Age. I just have more experience with other systems where I've run multi-year campaigns before. Though I'm getting more comfortable with 5th edition, especially in this past year since I'm running 4 different 5th edition campaigns. So yeah, those were the 2 lair actions. And in the first round, it flooded the room, which was a little difficult for most people. It basically turned the water into difficult terrain. So if people were trying to walk around, it would slow them down. However, if you had a swim speed, you could ignore this, and we have 2 merfolk in the party. So I realize that that's not going to be as big of an issue if Osaha and Shura can still move at full speed and really annoy this thing. So everyone else sort of moved forward, and then it was the creature's turn. And unfortunately, Osaha, Shura, and Famine had all sort of lined up in front of it. So instead of doing its ranged attack where it throws snakes at people, dealing bludgeoning damage when they hit, and creating a snake for them to fight that is suddenly in melee with them, it elected to use its venom spray, where all the snakes that collectively make up the head shoot a line of their venom in a 30-foot line, and he managed to hit all of them. Well, I mean, I believe Osaha passed the save, but I'm pretty sure Famine and Shura did not, and the hit reduced Shura to 8 hit points and prevented Shura from getting close for the rest of the fight. Shura just pulled off to the side. It was just Eldritch blasting the whole time, uh, because he wasn't fucking with that at his low hit points, unless he had to. Uh, and unfortunately, the Serpent never actually recharged its venom spray. And the rest of the fight, while it went very interesting, was not one-sided. It was still a close fight. It was still a hard fight. But it wasn't an extremely varied fight. Uh, the water drained on the next turn. Some NPCs pushed forward. Some NPCs stayed back. Aleshta dealt with a few. And Verdico were dealing with some little snakes as they respawned each round. Orson and Mikhail were dealing with little snakes. Ernesto and Bardov, Ernesto the carpenter's apprentice, and Bardov the full-blooded orc oarsman, who's basically just a generic sailor on the ship. He just sort of does whatever is needed of him at any time. They charged into the fray alongside Osaha and Sea Swift, Pellinnor's animal companion. Pellinnor was being pretty aggressive with Sea Swift this fight, and normally Pellinnor keeps Sea Swift back from things that are particularly strong. So in the second round of combat, where Pellinnor gave the order for Sea Swift to charge at the thing, I was worried, to say the least. So everyone got around it. During this time, however, it did turn and attack Sea Swift with its bite attack, and it took a slam at Osaha. Sea Swift took the bite, took a little bit of damage from the bite, but the snake's bite attack, the golem, has a pretty brutal poison. It's, oh god, I don't even remember how much it is, but it was a lot. And Sea Swift went down in a single bite after failing its Constitution saving throw, which made Pellinnor abandon their bow and charge in to try and help protect Sea Swift. So during the fight, things got pretty rough. Eventually, the party managed to surround the snake golem. They managed to get around it completely, which really prevented it from moving. And again, I should have had it flood the chamber, and have some of the humans be more worried about holding their breath and then surrounding it. And even with most of their attacks dealing 50% damage thanks to its resistance to just physical damage and bludgeoning damage, because it's a collection of snakes. It has some swarm traits, even though it's not technically a swarm creature, which is how I was running it. That it had swarm traits, but wasn't a swarm creature, basically. Uh, at which point, the snake was getting pretty hurt. It had done a fair bit of damage. A lot of people were really hurt. Shura, I think, got bit by one of the baby snakes and managed to pass his con save and went down to like 1 hit point, which was brutal because the baby snakes, you still took half the poison damage even if you passed the save, which was something I accidentally didn't put onto the snake golem. It was just, you save, you don't get affected by the poison. And then after dealing with the poisonous snakes, I was like, oh, I really should have made its poison save for half. That would have made it more consistently of a threat. Uh, at one point during the fight, though, when Shura got real low, Shura tried to go over to heal him, and ended up getting hit with an attack of opportunity and a bite, and took enough poison damage to drop. So we had Sea Swift on the ground and Osaha on the ground, and Sea Swift had already failed a death saving throw, and made 2 successes. So like everyone was getting pretty worried. But the creature was surrounded. It literally didn't have any way to move that wasn't going to trigger 4 or 5 attacks of opportunity. And between a mixture of Famine pelting it with spells that were getting through its immunity, and Shura ripping Eldritch Blasts into it, uh, the creature was quickly losing its position of strength. Even with the snakes and something applying a multiple annoyance or a minor annoyance, or even giving it advantage, because it would try summoning them in positions where it would aid the creature. It would give it advantage in flanking. Suddenly, that little snake nipping at your heels with that powerful venom distracts you, and the big snake uses that moment to lunge in. But they did manage to kill the thing. Pelennor getting the killing blow when the creature had, I think, 2 hit points left with her spear because she had run into melee combat, and she hit for 4 damage, which after the damage reduction did the exact 2 damage its health had. Uh, which definitely killed the thing. At which point, uh, everyone wasn't quite ready to relax yet, because people were still dying. So Alani quickly ran up and stabilized Osaha, who was hurt and wounded, and uh, then began preparing a prayer of healing to heal everyone who was hurt. Nobody died, but some of the NPCs got a little roughed up. It was mostly just the people who got hit were hit really hard. Ernesto was very hurt. Osaha was nearly dead. Sea Swift was nearly dead. Alani had taken a little bit of damage, and Shura was pretty close to dead. Uh, it was a good fight. I think had I made the Serpent stay back, used its range attack and flood the room to make it harder for people to get to it, I think the fight would have been a lot more interesting and probably uh, more risky. It definitely would have felt like a more harrowing fight. And I'll hopefully learn from my mistakes, especially since I get to talk about them here, so I get to relive them. After killing our snake golem and healing up their wounded, uh, excuse me, the group began looting the room. They opened the chests and discovered a flurry of magical items. There was, oh god, let me see if I can remember perfectly what there was. There was a dull iron. Oh, excuse me. What is going on with my throat right now? God. There was a dull iron necklace that had these two little prongs that sort of leaned back to the face, almost like an oxygen mask that sort of goes over your ears and fits into your nose. Uh, there was a magical hand crossbow. There was a bag of holding, which would prove to be extremely important. A pair of slippers that had this weird spidery design to them. Shoot. Necklace, slippers, bag. I think that might be it for the treasure that was in the chests, the two large chests, which were full of platinum and golden coins. Uh, I'll double check my notes again. If there was another item inside the chest, it's not jumping out at me right this second. However, Pelennor decided to do a little diving into the golden piles uh, as Shura passed the bag to Bardov and told him to just start shoveling gold into it. So Bardov, this big burly orc, went up to the gold mounds with his battle axe and just like shoveling gold into the bag. And Orson ran up and got beside him. It was like counting gold as quickly as possible. And he actually rolled like really, really high. And he was actually keeping a fairly accurate tally of how much gold the group was collecting, which was pretty impressive given the situation they were in. Alright, here are my notes. Let's take a look here. Alright, these are my notes from the fight. Did I write down the items? Oh, there was one other item. There was a little statue that almost appeared to be made of onyx or obsidian of a raven inside the chest. Pelennor did some diving and ended up discovering another amulet within a gold pile. It had this sort of odd jade shape to it and coloring. And the actual necklace of the amulet were these large circular beads that had runes and symbols drawn over them. Uh, they did a little bit of detect magic and discovered magic on these items, but no one in the party has identify, even though every single member of the party is a spellcaster, which, by the way, just pointing out, every member of the party is a spellcaster now that Shura has multi-classed into Warlock. Before, he was the only one who wasn't a spellcaster, and because of his race, he still had a wizard's cantrip, so even he could cast spells as a non-spellcaster. Uh, this group is pretty magical. But they didn't take any time to attune to the items to figure out what they were. Any of the ones that might have had an attunement, and none of them had identify, and no one was really to fuck with the items yet without knowing what they did. So they all sort of just got put in the bag. And after Bardov spent about an hour like shoveling gold, and a little bit longer, I think, because other people started helping, they had filled the bag of holding with golden and platinum and copper and silver coins. The bag of which was now holding about 35,000 gold. In gold coins, jewels, baubles, as well as the magical items that the group had found. At which point the group went back upstairs. The chamber was resealed. Famine. Oh wait, no, something happened. Pelennor took one of the torches and explained that they were magical. And Shura took one as well and just put it into his backpack, just because it might be useful later. Which reminds me, I'm pretty sure I need to write that down on his character sheet. Thank you, D&D recap. Everyone went upstairs, and They decided that they wanted to take a long rest because they hadn't really had a good rest before this. They again, everyone came down, found out what was happening, and then just went after they took a short rest before coming down. When they arrived at the temple during the late afternoon, so it was now like evening, night, and everyone was pretty spent. And they decided that this place would be relatively safe. Uh, so they took watch. Uh, I believe it was Pelennor and Famine on first watch, and they interacted a little bit. Or it was Pelennor and Mikhail. I don't quite remember. You know what? It was Pelennor and Mikhail. Famine might have been there as well, but Famine was distracted. I think all three of them were on watch. Yes. Yes. My brain is catching up with me. All three of them were on watch. When they were done, Famine ended up going back to sleep near Federico, who, in his half-asleep state, picked up the little goblin and pulled her up like he had picked up a pillow that had fallen off his bed, and just sort of, like, nestled into her lap as a pillow, which she was fine with. Pelennor went to bed over by Sea-Swift, off to the side, and Mikhail went over and woke up Alani, who decided to wake up Bardov. And the two of them had a bit of a conversation that led to Alani attempting to kiss Bardov and failing, like bumping his head against the other's jaw. And just this colossal fuck up as the much shorter half orc tried to kiss the full orc, which was funny. And when Bardov realized what Alani had been trying to do, because he hadn't at that time, Bardov corrected the mistake himself with honestly a one-liner that and just an action that is something I as a person would probably do in that situation, but Bardov, I'd to be humble, Bardov, I believe, has less charisma than I do. So it was probably not exactly what Bardov might have literally done, but you know what? Bardov's not dumb, and his charisma's not terrible. It's just not a stat he pours a lot of time into. And so the two of them ended up sharing a pretty intimate moment, to say the least. I'm not going to go into details here because YouTube. Yeah, and just, that's not entirely appropriate. And it's also like 9 in the morning, and I don't know how horny I want to be on main right now. So you know what? It's fine. We don't need to go into too much detail. But the two of them shared a night of passion, which was interesting because pretty early on, Bardov discovered that Alani physically was a man, and Alani realized that Bardov had not thought that. Which Bardov didn't seem to care, but it was still an interesting moment. Eventually, the night ended, and Alani woke everyone up. They all ate a little bit of food, and quickly went to bug out. They went back down the temple. Shura stayed behind for a moment just to make sure no one forgot anything. Just did a double check, made sure that he had sealed the temple appropriately, while everyone else went down the stairs. Alani and Osaha did a bit of fooling around. Osaha was doing like cartwheels down the steps of this massive temple and leaning onto Alani, and Alani was just, being the little brother and dealing with his older brother's bullshit. At which point, Shura rejoined the group. They got down, they got their rafts, and they began sailing downriver to get to the rendezvous point where they were supposed to meet with the ship. However, things went pretty interesting. As they had sailed for hours, they came up again to the large fortress, which was in the direction that the vampires had been going. And they discovered the vampire wagon-like thing, that large battering ram they had been taking with them was there. But they didn't see any scouts on the walls, and they didn't see anyone in the building, but the fires had clearly been put out. They push past this rather quickly, not wanting to engage in the vampires if they're still there. Uh, and they pushed on for another few hours. They were getting pretty close to the fork in the river, basically. When one of the party members, I don't remember who, maybe it was Pellinor, someone rolled pretty high on their perception and had just enough of a warning. Excuse me. Had just enough of a warning to notice that a large group of humanoids was approaching all around the backside of the rowboats, and we ended the session with rather explosively a large-looking war party or scout party of river heralds. Merfolk were about 150 feet behind the boats. But they were there, and they were in the woods on both sides of the river, sort of fanned out behind the party in a half-moon shape. That's where we ended the session, so... Ooh, what's gonna happen next session? I don't know, but hopefully we'll find out together. I want to thank you for listening to this D&D recap of my Ixalan campaign. If you have any questions about Ixalan, the campaign, or characters, please leave them in the comments below. Hit the like button, and if you enjoy listening to us recap our D&D sessions, or if you would be interested in hearing just full sessions recorded, or you like the scripts, let me know. Let me know what you prefer. I can record the full sessions and edit together videos of that. It just takes more time, but it also means I get to edit less. So, it's damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of thing. I want to thank everyone for coming by. I apologize for my throat. I don't know why it's suddenly so gunked, which sucks. And I'll see you next time.